G'day. Today we're doing a bit of work on a Landrover Discovery 4 2010 model, 2.7 litre turbo diesel, and we're doing a bit of work on the transmission. Now what's happening, when it warms up, he's got the dreaded floating shift in top gear on the tacho, probably the torque converter clutch solenoid, or possibly even some cross leaks on the valve body to case seals. It's only done 203,000 Ks. So we've got 6th gear and 5th gear in correct ratio. Now when you have an issue like that, where there are multiple fault codes and from all sorts of areas, it's a good idea to check your battery. Sometimes a low battery voltage or a bad earth strap will and can cause problems like that. Also the earth straps, quite often they're bolted to the paint on your vehicle, so there's not a real good connection at the earth strap. The only connection is through the thread of the bolt, so it's a good idea to do it in and out a few times. Put some WD-40 on the thread or some dielectric grease, the white lithium grease on there. Another good idea is to just, any electrical plugs, just squirt a bit of WD-40 in there as well. Sometimes the connections oxidise a little bit. So we've got our load tester there on the battery. Not too bad, but it is a little bit weak. If your battery has fillable electrolyte, it's a good idea to just make sure it's above the little plates in there. And we've got our battery charger on, all connected, red to positive, black to negative, or earth, on low, 12 volts, and you can see it's drawing almost 10 amps, so that battery's pretty flat. While you've got it up, make sure you check all your bushes, make sure your diffs aren't leaking, tail shaft, transfer case, anything out of the ordinary. And on this one, we've got to take this stone guard off to get access to the transmission. And you can see it's the 6HP26 series transmission with the plastic pan. Good idea to give it a bit of a run over with the wire brush and a blowout before you take the pan off. And also it's a good idea to let the transmission cool right down before you take these plastic pans off, just in case it's the wrong one. You might have to re-put it back on there again until you get the correct pan. To ID which particular transmission, you'll see there's some raised stamped letters there on the left hand side of the transmission, up about halfway up the case. A little bit hard to get the angle right here, but there you go, you can see it there. And we've got a 2010 model, 6-speed. You can see you can either have the V6, a 2.7 litre, can either be the 6HP26 or 6HP28. If it's a 6HP26, it'll have the 1068010 or the 1068020 code. This is just to identify which parts you may need. And if you have a 6HP28, it'll have a 1068040 or 050 code on the side of the transmission. And sometimes if the sticker's still there, You can identify it on that sticker if the letters haven't rubbed off or if the sticker's still present. And that's located on the bell housing. 10mm Allen key, drain all the oil out, it makes it a little bit less messy. Now sometimes an issue with these sort of transmissions, you'll find that the cross member or the chassis runs right along the front of the transmission. So it's very hard to get access to the bolts. You can see them through there. So sometimes you need to take off the bolts off there and either jack the whole transmission up a little bit or lower it down just to get better access to it, whether you can go from the front or from the back side. And my advice would be to first take off these really difficult ones off first, just in case you're not able to get them off. It's a lot easier to put these on than those on. We just can't get it out, so I'll take this bolt out. What's that? 18mm. And then we'll just jack up the back of the transmission. That'll give us a little bit more access to pull that filter neck out. There we go. That's cleared a little bit more. So it's moved it up as far as it'll go. Transmission's hitting the floor of the vehicle.
Can't go higher.
No, it's hit the floor. You've got it out.
Trying a bit of this oil out.
I'll let that out first and then you might be able to manoeuvre it out. And there you can see that bracket there has just hit the floor, so we're just going to remove that bracket just so it can go up a little bit more. We're going to find the magic spot where it comes out. The filter neck going up into the pump, and that's the problem with these. So we've tried jacking up the transmission. What we've opted for is to put a steel pan kit in this transmission. So basically what that means is we're going to hacksaw off that little neck just so we can get this old plastic filter out. There we go. And that's how we get a Landrover pan off, plastic pan off. Now that we've easily got the pan out, we're going to take the valve body out. Start off with the case connector sleeve. There's a little tang there, you just click, push it up, and it'll just wind itself out. Good idea to blow it all out before you start any of this work. Can't put my hand through the back there. There we go. There we go, the plug's out. And now, sometimes you need to put a bit of tension on the sleeve just so you can pull this little fork down. Good idea to try it, but no. It won't. It should come out nice and easily. If you force it, you'll break the bracket there that holds it on the Mechatronic plate. And you can also see it's collected on the range sensor, it's collected a fair bit of swarf. There we go, it's come down, you can see that. You've got to press the little tang there and it just slides out. And now we can wiggle out that sleeve. Go, sleeves out. Just push it up. There you go. So now you can see these tube seals are flattened completely out, and you've got your bridge seal up there. Good idea at this stage to do a air pressure test of all the clutches, make sure they're not leaking or anything like that. But in this situation, I think these tube seals flattened out, and you saw the contamination on the range sensor, how much metallic swarf was floating around in there. The solenoids are probably chock-a-block as well. On the ATSG manual, you can see where those pressure ports are for the clutches. You can air pressure test them. For reference, we've got the clutch application chart there. We've got the solenoid application chart. We've got the generic solenoid ID there. Different 6HP26, 28 transmissions will have different color codes on the solenoids as well, so be aware of that. You always need to put the same color code in the same position. And here we've got the solenoids. You can see which ones are normally on and normally off. It's important to make sure you have the right color code in the right spot. Yeah, you can see this one here when it's off, and this one's different. You've got no flow going through that when it's off, and this one when it's off it's got full open, so that one's normally open, normally closed. Okay, we've got the tube seals. You can see this one's about an inch and 550, and the new one is 1/615. That's the longest one. Then we've got the second longest one, 1 200 there. Inch and 225, and the shorter ones 980, that one, and the other one 980 as well, and the new ones 1 and 20 there. Inch and 20 thou. So you can see that they've all flattened out quite a bit. So there'll be no tension sealing that between the valve body and the case. Now I've got the bridge seal, and those rubber seals have hardened as well. What's that, about 277? And the bigger one 275. The new ones, we've got the whole new bridge seal, plastic on the bridge seal. Just be aware, sometimes these are a different measurement. These are 562. You just compare them. 562. So it's the same one. And I'm replacing it because sometimes they can get a little crack or a split there, especially where the joint is. And I've just taken a couple of those just off one side just to show you. What do we have? 275 on the other one, and they're 305. 310. Now I'm going to replace the solenoids. We've got a solenoid set for it. To take this Mechatronic plate off, you'll notice you've got a bolt here, 1, 2, 1 here, and 2 here. Need to undo that. And I've got this frame here so I don't damage it when I'm flipping it around. Still need to be careful. And then we'll just slide that carefully off the solenoids there. They've been loosened. Not a good idea to just loosen them with a tech gun because you can destroy the hex and the bolt of the head. The head bolt. Okay. Important not to touch these surfaces, that's where those seals sit on. But over here you can definitely wiggle it off. And we just carefully, and I'm pushing up here on this side where the solenoid's up, and that's this plate, Mechatronic plates, located on those terminals on the solenoids. So I'm just carefully working it off. And also another thing is important to let it cool right down if you're going to reuse it, which we are going to do. Otherwise the plastic can distort. There we go, right off. And you can see that sensor there on the range sensor, it's all contaminated with fine metal, so we'll clean that off as well on the other side as well. You can just flex that pin a little bit and slide it out. So it's not coming off very easily. There you go. You can see it's got it on both sides. Torx Plus 25. I've loosened all these by hand first. Make sure you press in as hard as you can, just so you don't destroy the head there. And then it's important to make a note of where all the solenoids are. What I like to do, where the selector is, I call that 0. And then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's just how I do it. You can do it the opposite way, as long as you know in your own mind which way you're going. And it's important to not mix up the order of where they are. You've got to have a yellow, black, blue, blue, yellow, blue, yellow. On different transmissions they'll have different colour codes, and sometimes they'll even have a different, the blue one will be in a different spot, or the yellow one, or the orange one, depending on which transmission we're talking about. Starting from the selector shaft end. When you're pushing these in, there is a nice chamfer on there, but what you do is you put a bit of pressure on it and just turn it slowly. You want it to find its own way in, not just push it in. Sometimes you can cut the O-ring. We'll just line these up all nice and as square as we can get it. Like that. Double check that the colour code is in the same spot. And now we can give the Mechatronic plate a bit of a flush and a clean. We want to clean all the sensors, double check your little terminals. You can see it only sits in one little spot on there. Those sensors, speed sensors, you want to make sure they're clean as well. Okay. Now I'm going to leave these all on loose until we get that Mechatronic plate in, and then we're going to give the solenoids a little bit of a wiggle just so they locate where they naturally sit in contact with the Mechatronic plate. Mechatronic plate, cleaned it all, blown it all out nicely. You've got to be very careful, especially they tell you not to get static. Use a special non-static wrist bracelet just so you don't cause any static to damage anything. align up the pins. Remember the solenoids, that bracket's still loose. And, oh, hang on, I forgot to give this a wash. Sensor's nice and clean. Make sure you clean all inside those little holes there. You'll end up with metallic swarf in there as well. And we don't force it in, we just gently, I'm just going to try and flex that pin away from it, just so it slides in a bit easier. There you go. Alright. We need the manual shaft. And we've got to align a little slot in the manual shaft with this as we're pushing the Mechatronic plate on there. Like so. And now you'll feel it's reached where the solenoids are. And I'm just going to slowly press down on it. There we go. You want it to go down nice and evenly. That's alright. Have a look here. And that's lined up with the, let's see that there. The selector shaft's lined up on there. Carefully flip it back over. Now I'm just going to give the solenoids a bit of a wiggle like that, just so it sits in its natural spot. A little bit hard to do, especially those inner ones. And now we can tighten all those up. Bit of assembly gel on the bridge seal, stop it from falling out on us before we get the valve body back up. And this will just, as soon as it warms up, the oil will just absorb it. It won't sit there generally. There we go. So I've got the tube seals in, we've got the bridge seal in, we've pressure tested the clutches. Important to note that the, what is it, the D2, that one there, if you remember back from that chart I recorded a little while ago, you don't pressure test that one. And now we're ready to put the valve body back on. And don't forget to align your selector. All tensioned up. Good idea to double check all the bolts 2 or 3 times, just in case you miss any. Now we're going to put the connector sleeve in. Good idea to put a little bit of oil on there, just slides in better. And you've got to put tension on it just so you can slide that fork up. It should slide up nice and easily, or you can damage it. And the problem is when you push it in, the rubber O-rings are trying to push it back out. It hasn't sat in its spot yet. And of course, make sure it's all nice and clean in there. You've blown it all out. You can also smear a little bit of oil on that case there, and they should have a chamfer on it. But it's also good to put it in the correct position. You see there's that little tang there that has to locate in the transmission plug as well. You just find where that little tang locates and then you can wiggle it in. There There isn't a lot of room, but you can see what we're talking about. Gone in. There we go. That one went in quite reasonably. Now, because we had to chop the neck on the filter and the pickup to get the bloody thing out, what we're going to do is we're going to put a steel pan upgrade kit on this, which basically means there's a separate filter and a separate pan instead of it all in one incorporated unit. And that'll make fitting it, or removing it and fitting it, a lot cheaper and easier. A little bit of oil on the seal there. And also careful not to get any of that rubbish off those cross members on it. And that just pushes up like that. And we've got the steel pan kit. We're also going to add a bottle of this platinum lube guard to boost all the oil properties and goodies in it. And you also should get a set of bolts. They're not the Torx head ones, they're the normal 8mm head bolts. New pan gasket instead of the rubber pan seal. And before you tighten it up, it's a good idea to put all the little bolts in everywhere. Will be a little bit awkward getting those front ones on there, but you can do it with a little 1/4 inch swivel. If you remove the bolt off that rear mount, don't forget to put it back on. Double check your work as you go along. Forgot to put the plug in, so we'll give it a squirt of WD-40. And these take the Lifeguard 6 transmission fluid in there, or you can use an equivalent. We're using the Tritec low viscosity compatible fluid for these. Now initially you'll just get it weeping out of there. Start the car just for a moment, because we've had the valve body off. We've got to do it in a few stages so we don't starve the pump of oil. Yep, start her up. That's 3 litres in there. Just start it briefly and turn it off. And we've got 7 litres in there. What temperature have we got? 18 degrees on the scan tool. Now I'm not going to put any more in because it's just weeping out of there at 18 degrees. Got to get it up to between 30 and 50 degrees. So we're going to aim for 40 degrees. You want it just coming out of there. If we leave it like that, it'll be over full when it gets to operating temperature. The oil may hit the spinning parts when it expands with heat and aerate the oil. You don't want aerated oil in an automatic transmission. No good to have it underfilled or overfilled. Transmission temperature on 27, so still need a little bit more before we just re-measure that fluid level. I put the plug back in just to not make a big mess. And now both the transmission fluid temperature and the internal temperature are the same, 35 degrees, so I'll just whiz down and just check the fluid level. That should continue to go up slowly. little bit too much. We just want a thin stream within that specific temperature range. And that's probably about okay there. Turn it off. There we go. So just once again, double check your work, make sure you've done everything up, put all your plugs in. We've still got to put the stone guards on this, but before we do that, we'll take it for a test run. Anyway, I hope that helps. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave any comments or suggestions in the section below. And don't forget to throw us a beer if any of this information helps. Much appreciated, keeps us motivated. Thank you for watching.